Today we finish off the Romans, fall of the Roman Empire. We'll look at the Christianity's rise and spread and how it basically ends up becoming a cultural and political force that replaces Roman power throughout the region. With more like Jesus, Nazareth, Paul, Peter. We have Christianity becomes legal in the Roman Empire, and Constantine. Look at Julian the Apostate, the last non-Christian emperor of Rome. The Emperor Theodosius, the Theodosian Code, the division of the empire. His sons take control of two halves of the empire, Honorius in the west and Arcadius in the east. Roman general Stilicho, Alaric the Visigoth in his sack of Rome in 405, Attila the Hun, Gaiseric the Vandal, Ricimer, another late Roman general. The last two Roman emperors of the west, Julius Nepos and Romulus Augustulus. Odoacer the Ostrogoth, Clovis, king of the Franks, and look at some of the successor states in the west, the Visigoths, the Ostrogoths, the Franks, and the Anglo-Saxons, moving from the ancient period into the Middle Ages. Any questions on that? Okay. So you got Christianity rising in Judea, the deeply divided world of the Jews, Jesus of Nazareth going back and forth, ministry of about 3 years, spreading a message of salvation, of peace, of love, and brotherhood. Basically, summed up quite simply in the verse, love God and love thy neighbor. And for some people, it needs to be a little more difficult than it seems to be. But Jesus of Nazareth, even though he had this message of peace, spoke of the spiritual kingdom, his fame and the miracles are being reported around him of taking a couple of loaves and fishes, feeding thousands of people, healing the sick, the blind, raising the dead. Like I said, created a lot of jealousy. And eventually, Christ is betrayed by one of his own apostles, Judas Iscariot, charged and convicted and sentenced to death by crucifixion. Now, crucifixion is going to be a common punishment for a lot of Christians. The Romans use that as the worst possible punishment for all sorts of crimes. By this point, according to the story, Christ was crucified with the two thieves. Or Spartacus of rebellion, 6,000 of those who rose up with Spartacus against the Romans in the slave rebellion were all crucified. It's a very gory, very humiliating punishment, very long and drawn out punishment. Now, Christ, it's actually a Greek word, which means anointed one, chosen one. It's not a last name. That may seem kind of sacrilegious to say that, but it's some people do think that. For crucifixion, it's a nasty, gory punishment. Basically, you're nailed to a piece of wood. You have this lowercase t or crucified. Sometimes they put a sign over it saying what your crime is. And the sign over Christ's cross was supposedly Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. Sometimes it would be the capital T, just How tall these crucifixes were in Judea, not exactly sure, but they didn't have a lot of tall trees out there, so it would have been terribly high. And basically, what they do is they drive the Romans doing this. They drive these big spikes into your wrist. And so your arms are played against this cross, and they'll cross your legs, drive this spike into your legs to nail you to the, your body to the, the rest of your body to the cross, and you hang there until you die. There are ways you can die. Sometimes while you're hanging, you can't breathe. You slowly suffocate. Sometimes it's exposure, because sometimes this can last for a couple of days. Sometimes heart attack, bleeding to death, stroke from massive blood clotting. So it's horrible, nasty death. Like I said, your Romans, typical of their punishment, they're usually going to beat you before they go through the crucifixion process. Now, they're not going to, when they crucify somebody, they're not going to do it here in the middle of the palm of the hand, because it's going to happen, fingers in your hand, slip right through. You go for the bones of the wrist. And the Romans, they considered the wrist to be part of the hand itself. Actually, you left on there for several hours, however long it takes. Except it can be a few hours, it can be a few days. They stripped down, humiliated. Like I said, nothing to eat or drink, of course, because you're being executed. Romans would typically give people being crucified vinegar, make it even worse on them. And then, of course, after it's all done, when they think you're dead, the head of the Roman guards have to drive this spear into your body to make sure you're really dead. Make sure you're not.
So the guards would always be watching. There always be somebody watching them just hang there.
Yeah, to make sure that no one's pretending to be dead, so they'll take them down. So they have to stab them just to make sure they're really dead. According to the story, Christ's crucifixion took 9 hours. But so he's taken body's taken down off the cross, buried and entombed. Believers said that they saw Christ rising from the tomb, rising from the dead. Spent some time with them 40 days afterwards, called the Pentecost, which Christ ascended to heaven after that. But once that happens, as a crucifixion by traditional date was on the Jewish calendar translated roughly about April 15th, at 29 AD. Christianity began spreading far beyond simply just a reform movement in Judaism. The apostles went throughout the Roman world and even beyond the Roman world trying to establish churches and spreading the message of Christ beyond simply the Jewish community. In fact, by the end of the first century, you have Christian churches in every major Roman city. But it's illegal at this point. So what they're doing here is highly illegal. 11 of the 12 disciples were martyred. Only John the Apostle was not killed. Saint Mark, for example, was killed in Ethiopia, supposedly, as for trying to establish a church there. Another martyred in Armenia, a couple other places. But since it was illegal, a lot of these shrines in these people's Christian homes were actually inside closets. They didn't, like I said, they had to meet secretly. In fact, even to identify each other as Christians, They have to be very secret about it. So in the early church, the fish symbol usually is a predominant symbol of Christianity, because translated from Greek, fish is letters for the word fish in Greek are translated to Jesus of Nazareth, basically the name Christ Himself. And so sometimes to try to identify each other, they might be just, remember these are dirt streets, so they might have a stick and just draw an arc in the street, in the dirt, or with their foot, swing the foot aside. And if there's another Christian, they recognize that. They'll swing the arc the other way to make a symbol. That's how they identify each other. The cross symbol being used by Christians, it's not really used much until the second century. You find a few uses of it here and there, but really not until the second century. But it spreads very slowly because being a Christian is a death penalty offense, but the message was so compelling and overwhelming that thousands upon thousands of Romans quickly ran in and joined the faith. Jews and non-Jews alike, Romans and people from all walks of life. I remember, life is nasty, brutish, and short. It's a corrupt world, corrupt government. People looking for something a little better and realizing that their best hope is the next life. Life in heaven, earthly paradise, free of all the pain and privation of this world. Place where you have nothing but joy and love for all eternity. Very compelling message. One open to anybody. So, increasingly in the 1st and 2nd century AD, some of the early Christian leaders have a lot of asceticism. An ascetic is basically someone who rejects worldly goods, worldly wealth, basically live a kind of a nomadic life usually, no possessions, just basically stripping all the entrapments and entanglements of this world and concentrating strictly on just spiritual life. But martyrs were real models for the church, and early church leaders recognizing that you may be called to have to give up your life for your faith. And there were real problems in the early church because Roman authorities would confront people and they would recant under threat of torture and death. There were others who would sometimes rat out their friends to save their own lives. So that caused a lot of tensions in a lot of early churches. But it was Paul, about 85 to 8067, who started reaching out to non-Jews especially. Now, the New Testament, not by Christians, the New Testament is basically divided up into two parts. First part, the four Gospels, written by the Apostles, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, basically talking about the life and ministry of Christ. Second part, basically, are commentaries on the Gospels and the ministry of Christ. Basically, this is a brand new religion. So, what people practice in Christian churches today, it's from tradition set down for 2,000 years. This is brand new at this point. So you have a lot of faithful, a lot of followers asking all sorts of different questions about things, trying to interpret and figure everything out. So, and a lot of these letters were written by Paul. It was written by other Christian leaders, but a lot of them were in forms of letters. Letters to the Ephesians, letters to the Galatians, basically writing to church leaders in these different cities. The Epistle to the Romans. Yeah.
How did most of the stories in the Bible come to be?
Early on, it was passed down word of mouth. In fact, a lot of these, particularly the four Gospels, a lot of them were written until years after those men died. Just basically was passed down. So the church was having a lot of debates over just what they could nail down and say what specifically had happened. In fact, that's where you get the Council of Nicaea in 325. We'll get to in a minute. Basically, church leaders had to sit down and debate what we say is really the Gospels, what is really the New Testament, and what is not. What is just a folk tale.
Yeah, and what actually, because word of mouth, a lot of things get mixed up.
I was going to say, is there any way that any of that still could have been debated or fabricated before eyes? This is not how this happened, or this.
Oh yeah, there were a lot of books that were left out of the Bible.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Where they have, you know, like,
Yeah.
I know you don't like
Apocrypha.
history channels, but, you know, like they be showing them, like, things like the things was left out of the Bible.
Banned from the Bible, lost books of the Bible.
Yeah,
They were
like
called
they
the
said-
Apocrypha.
Like they said, Mary, she was one of the apostles, and her books was left out of the Bible.
Yeah, so that Mary Magdalene was Jesus' wife. No evidence. Really don't know. Except he never referred to a wife in any of the four Gospels. None of the commentaries referred to a wife. Like I said, it's a problem trying to figure out just what exactly who was saying what. Like I said, there were a lot of supposed Gospels written by different people, but they couldn't confirm them. As some people alleged that some of these books were left out for political purposes, to try to say minimize the role of women or certain groups, or try to push a certain point of view about how the church should be run. Again, we have no evidence one way or another, just simply a supposition based on a few scattered ideas. It does come down to, like so many things in Christianity, a matter of faith. In fact, between the Roman Catholic version, the Protestant version, the Roman Catholic book Bible has several books left out in most Protestant versions. But again, serious questions, because remember, it's a brand new religion, just getting it started. They can't even decide when they're going to celebrate Easter. In the early church, Easter was the major holiday, not Christmas. In fact, early Puritan settlers in the United States, they didn't even celebrate Christmas. Because usually Christmas is just a big party, big get-together, people drinking and carousing. The Puritans are just not going to do that.
In fact, I heard that Christmas was originally a Russian holiday.
Actually, originally German. Most of the traditions we have for Christmas come from Germany. Like I said, the Christmas tree, German.
Something like German.
Yeah. Yeah.
German.
So a lot of our Christmas carols, German. Some
Maybe it's
mixture
something
of it. I believe that some of these early pagan holidays were originally were kind of converted into Christian holidays.
The Catholics took a lot of those.
You have the Mithra's birthday from the Mithra religion. It was very popular in the Middle East among the soldiers. Their god born December 25th.
Wow.
Like I say, but Christ's birthday, I say, sure, no birth certificates. Like I say, we know he existed, because like, you're not going to have this much written on somebody who didn't exist at that time period. Actually, even non-Christians, like a historian Josephus, actually had brief mentions of him, but we have more surviving records on Jesus than some Roman emperors even. But regardless, this is a religion that's going to transform the Roman Empire and the entire world. Christianity is the largest religion in the world today, dominant religion on 5 continents. But it's starting out this way, and except Peter, according to the Gospels, was given the keys to the kingdom, basically made head of the church, and he became the head of the church at Rome, essentially the first pope. So they talk about Pope Francis today, talk about the throne of St. Peter, that's who they're referring to. And supposedly Peter is buried on the grounds of the Vatican. I'll kind of keep list of everything, got a list of popes. I'll be using portions of this list for this exam and the next one. Some popes are very important figures throughout this early period in the Middle Ages. So, but I'm not going to ask you to memorize all 255 popes. That's just inhumane. It's gone back 2,000 years ago. This basically is a list so you can keep track of.
So Peter was the first pope.
Yeah, by tradition. Also, the longest serving pope at 35 years. Was killed in the early pogroms of Nero. And so his successor was Linus from Tuscany, also in Italy. He's briefly mentioned in the Epistle to Timothy. So Peter and Linus were the only 2 popes actually mentioned in the Bible. You've got to remember these commentaries and letters are written going decades after the crucifixion. But most of these early popes, it's not the cushy job it is today. You're right around your little Pope-mobile, waving, great crowds. No, it was a very difficult job. You're the head of a brand new church. You have a command from Jesus to lead the church and bring people into the fold. And since this is illegal in the Roman Empire, you are a target. You be the first target whenever the emperors decide they're going to get rid of Christians. Every one of the popes of the first century were martyred. Peter, Linus, Anacletus, Clement I, Evaristus, all died horrible deaths. St. Anacletus is martyred at age 91. St. Clement I, in 897, is ordained by St. Peter the priest originally. Spanish of the Crimea by the Emperor Trajan. Basically, they're kind of locked in this little prison area, and they have no food, no water. Well, the Pope here literally relieved the thirst of 2,000 Christians imprisoned here by a miracle, basically making it rain. Clement died in captivity. Evaristus was a son of a Bethlehem Jew, who had been martyred in 105. Alexander I, martyred in 115. Sixtus I, martyred in 125. Along the way, they have to tell such questions as when you can celebrate Easter. St. Telesphorus strengthened the tradition of celebrating Easter on Sunday. That is on the Sabbath day. He's martyred in 136.
So there are people in there for a couple of years near that mark there.
Yeah, basically a new guy would come in as Pope, and the Romans would come in and butcher them, wipe out as many as they could.
But it was legal, or it was
Christianity was illegal.
illegal.
It's illegal until Constantine in the 4th century. Yeah. In fact, Pope St. Victor I, at the end of the 2nd century, ruled that Easter would be observed on Sundays, on threat of excommunication. Basically, you celebrate Easter on Sunday or else. Now, in the Catholic Church, excommunication basically means they're removing all the church protections from Christian church. Yeah.
One Sun, like it is now, just one Sunday
Yeah, one Sunday.
of every year. I didn't know.
Yeah. Victor is also the first pope born in Africa.
Ooh.
Yeah. Victor the first.
Mhm.
Yeah. From living in North Africa. And then these different issues like Montanism and Gnosticism that basically kind of outside the mainstream Christianity, they're trying to create some ecclesiastical conformity, so we have to deal with those issues. But basically, to elect a new pope, tradition would emerge in the Middle Ages would be you'd have the College of Cardinals, basically the cardinals, the next highest leaders in the church getting together, and they would get together and elect a new pope. So now they have to do, whenever a new pope, they have to bring a new pope, they bring in those cardinals from around the world. They might be a couple of days, might be a couple of weeks. There's actually a couple of instances where the College of Cardinals had to meet for a couple of years. And they finally decide who the pope's going to be. Now, of course, this is the Roman Catholic Church. Most Christians in the world are Roman Catholic. That's 1.2 billion. 1.3 billion, depending on the numbers, but it's a very hierarchical church. So they believe that somebody needs to answer to someone else. There has to be some conformity. There has to be some rules set up. Someone needs to decide who goes to what church. Someone gets out of line, they need somebody to discipline somebody. Essentially, you go to any Catholic church in the world on a Sunday, they'll be singing the same songs, same prayers, same theme for the day. Next to the homily, the little sermon the priest gives, that might be a little different from one person to another, but basically, same theme, same songs, all churches of the world. And it's designed to be a very reverential service. Stand up, sit down, you kneel, stand back up again. Communion every Sunday. Everybody lines up for the Eucharist cracker and the wine, always wine. That is the blood and body of Christ, except no substitutes. And I say, it's supposed to be a quiet service. Prayer, reverence. Basically, you're supposed to sit and listen to the Spirit of God. You walk into the big cathedrals, you're blown away by it. Of course, that all that kind of creates some criticism. Of course, you have a religion of 2 billion people, you're going to have some criticism from the world. But this was Catholic tradition. That is, you build a church, you're going to put some effort into it. All Catholic churches are made out of stone. All Catholic churches are very ornately decorated, trying to show their reverence. All Catholic services are very quiet, reverential, quiet prayer, quiet sermons. Everyone leading the same, reciting the same prayers, reciting the same songs. Uniformity. It is one church, one body. And everything in a Catholic service is very symbolic. I'd say it's very different, say, Baptist tradition, Church of Christ tradition, where it's basically up to the individual church to decide. So, everything is dictated from Rome, to the cardinals, to the bishops, to the local priests. And so you have confessions that you're supposed to confess your sins, admit your wrongdoing. Catholics tend to cross themselves. So they kind of do this, but also you have a lot of Orthodox, Greek Orthodox priests do that as well. A couple other of the Protestant religions will do that, Episcopalians, but most commonly Catholics. Basically, that's its own form of prayer. Father, Son, Holy Ghost. But of course, as the church is getting established, and it's in the Roman Empire, especially getting into the early Middle Ages, all the services are going to be held in the one common language of the Roman Empire, Latin. It's the same way for centuries. These services are held in Latin. Of course, it came to be a problem because not all your priests are very educated or could speak Latin. Some of them couldn't even read. But most educated people in Europe in the Middle Ages were the priests. The ones that had any kind of formal education or training. So everything they learned to do in Catholic services was very formal, very ritualized. So, and that's where those traditions come down from. Of course, there are going to be a lot of criticisms of it. We'll see how the Protestant movement emerges, but this is the very beginning of it. Nome Patri et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. It's Latin. Understand, all this going on, mass executions, Christians being thrown to the lions, basically. Take women and little kids for being Christians, they throw them into the big gladiatorial pit and watch lions and wild animals tear them apart. But there were instances where lions didn't eat them. That's it. Some say miracle, some say lion was already full. But there were instances that just didn't work.
So they just go on to slay there and let them.
Sometimes they just release them. There actually were cases where they're burning Christians at the stake and they couldn't get them alive.
How would they capture these lions?
Oh, they had nets and stakes and spears, just kind of throw the net over them, kind of poke them and prod them into this cage and carry them along. In fact, the Romans used so many wild and exotic animals in their gladiatorial matches that some species actually ended up going extinct.
They have people watching this, like people that want to watch this, or was it just like private or what?
Oh yeah, they had these auditoriums that could tell thousands of people. People wanted to see this. This was their entertainment. They loved seeing people being mauled, people killing each other. Like I said, kind of bloodthirsty, but like we said last time, how many murders do we watch on TV as Americans?
It's different. That's not actually happening.
In our case, it's faked. In a lot of cases, but there's some people who will go on YouTube and watch murders and executions.
Yeah.
There are people who watch the 9/11 tapes, watching the buildings falling over and over and over again. People watch video footage of airline crashes, war documentaries, and watching that plane blow up in the sky. You're just watching somebody get killed. What did we do when Afghanistan was invaded? We invaded Iraq. We watched it on TV. So yes, there are a lot of people who still do have that kind of bloodthirsty streak. A lot of people do get a thrill out of watching that. So we're not necessarily better than the Romans. We do have to give some serious thought to as we are as individuals and as a society. So what did my wife and I do this weekend? Went to a movie and saw a ghost story. We know people are probably going to die. Yeah, we knew it was a fake. We knew it wasn't a real story.
What movie did you see?
Didn't that turn out to be a murder mystery?
Yeah, Crimson Peak.
That's
I
what I
want to
thought.
see that so bad. Is it good?
It's not bad. It's better seen worse, but like I said, it's worth an evening out. Like I said, again, all that storytelling, but issue. But they're going there just to watch someone die. No, it's better for an interesting story. Like I say, when other stories movies I may watch, like the paranormal activity movies. You go to the movie just to watch people get scared. Actually, there's this last one we went to go see. There's this big old guy sitting there in the front row with a scary scene. Guy gets up and runs out of the theater. Walk it up, run! But, we have to understand certain things about human nature. It's part of our study of history and understand it.
These days, you figure out it's not really bloodthirst that drives it, it's drama.
Yeah, it's drama.
You're still drawing the gladiator fights.
Okay. Like I said, something I've noticed about some people is, I just say, oh, I hate drama. You're the ones who like it the most and try to stir it up. But in all of this, remember, this is a pacifist religion. Love thy neighbor, turn the other cheek, love those who hate you. Like I said, in the Gospel, Jesus is always making fun of the tax collectors. Why? Because in the Roman Empire, tax collection was not done by the government; it's done by private contractors. Basically, the guys go up to the Roman officials, say they'll collect taxes. They name a quota. We're going to collect this much, and anything they collected over that quota, because they give the quota they meet to the government, but anything they meet over that quota, they keep for themselves as our profit. So basically, these are shakedown artists. A little more than the glorified thieves. You know, they rob people blind. Slack around a little bit of net needed. Basically, these are people with the lowest, lowest character. Yeah. Like I say, American government today is done. This is tax collection is done by the government. You owe a certain amount. Here it is. Pay up. If you dispute this amount, take it to court or arbitration. And basically, you're saying, yeah, these people lowest, people everybody hate, scum of the earth, but you got to love them too. But overall, pacifist religion, war, violence considered a sin. So all this happening, all these people are being rounded up, executed, butchered. Nobody fights back. Pacifism. Because you die, you're going to heaven. You're dying as a martyr. So all these executions, thousands of people, wave after wave, one emperor after another. Well, finally you get to Constantine. So the last major persecution is under Diocletian, 303 and 311. And by the age of toleration under Diocletian. Basically saying persecutions will end, Christianity is legal. Basically, if you're peaceful, mind your own business, don't hurt anybody, cause any problems, they'll leave you alone. Then you get to Constantine. The first in particular. Between 312 and 337. The Edict of Mediolanum. 313. It's called the Edict of Milan. Basically, Christianity becomes the official religion of the Roman Empire. There are that many people still, after all these persecutions, that's making the official religion.
Can't kill an idea.
Yeah. I'd say you can defeat an idea, you can discredit an idea, but you can't kill it. So, after centuries of persecution, Christianity is the official religion of Rome. Christianity conquered the Roman Empire without firing a shot. No Christian armies or riots, demonstrations. Slow, steady faith, slow, steady progress. So in this case, the meek really did inherit the earth.
That's what I was just gonna say. Jesus' prophecy came true.
But Constantine's later emperors, though, they're not necessarily doing this from a spiritual or altruistic of reasons. They're doing a lot of this for political reasons as well, looking for something to unify the Roman people. Because the Roman Empire is deeply divided, rich against poor, different ethnic groups. Rome is under attack on all sides. Nobody believes in the emperor anymore. No one's going to worship the emperor. It's a joke. They need something to unify, something that appeals to everyone, every man, woman, child. Emperors, they come and go. Here today, gone tomorrow. 3 other guys claiming it. Throne right behind you. Feeling that this would appeal to everyone, unite everyone. It's a universal religion, and it did work, but remember, what did Rome just spend the last 3 centuries doing to Christianity? Killing. What was the Roman government doing in the meantime? All these Roman officials. They're taking bribes, stealing from the public, waging wars for trying to gain power, and killing innocent women and children just because they happen to belong to their own church. Now, one thing the Edict of Milan also does is it makes all religions open to be practiced in the Roman Empire. They have total freedom of religion in the Roman Empire at this point. But Christianity preferred. Anybody can practice any religion, but they prefer Christianity. But what Rome had done, though, in those centuries was they completely alienated all Christians. The surviving Christian leaders, they're still preaching against sin, against corruption, against the Roman state. They abandoned sin, become the ascetic, give up the trappings of this world, embrace the spiritual kingdom, etc., etc. But of course, they still had the issues of what they believed as Christians, the Bible's going to be. And so you have the Council of Nicaea convened in 325 to decide those questions. So this is under Pope St. Sylvester I. Pope from 314 to 335. And they're bringing in all the bishops and cardinals and church leaders. Nicaea, the city of Nice, France. Discuss these issues, among other things, what's going to be in the Bible. I think, what do we believe as Christians? The result from that not only was the initial Bible, but it's also the Nicene Creed. Like I say, many denominations, they recite this at every church service: Catholic, Methodist, Episcopal, Presbyterian. Basically, what you believe as a Christian. Believe in various versions go, I believe in Jesus Christ our Lord, born of the Virgin Mary.
I believe in Jesus Christ, our Lord, who was born of the Virgin Mary, conceived of the Holy Spirit, suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified, dead, and buried. On the 3rd day he rose from the dead and ascended into heaven and sitteth at the right hand of God the Father Almighty.
Is that the creed?
Yes, that's the Apostles' Creed.
You're not coming from the
My
Nicene
dad's a
Creed.
preacher.
Oh.
So you better know it. Actually, I've been going to church my entire life, practically, and I still have to look on the bulletin, and it says, so the Roman Catholic version, Christ descended to hell for 3 days, basically trying to bring the souls out of hell, then ascended to heaven. But the Protestant version usually skips over that part, basically ascended to heaven, set up the right hand of God, the Father Almighty, then just come judge quick and dead, so on and so forth. In slightly different versions from different denominations, but basically all coming from the same statement in the 325. Basically, what do you believe as a Christian? But things are still not going well for Rome. So what you see is happening is, here, page 181, you have all these tribes storming across the Danube River, basically invading Rome, and east along the Rhine into Gaul. So Rome's having to spend more and more of its time, more and more of its efforts, trying to defend against these constant invasions. Like I said, a couple centuries before, would have been a problem. But these tribes being driven steadily further west by various climatic changes and climate disasters, but also Rome is the goose laid the golden eggs. Like I said, Rome's very rich still, even in the 4th century, as bad as things are, compared to what they have. Rome represented stability.
Church kicking in, aren't they going to start generating a lot of wealth?
The church will have a lot of programs to help the poor. That's part of where the tithes came in. In fact, that's why for many centuries governments required their people to tithe, citizens to tithe, because these social services weren't being provided by the government, being provided by the church. The government had to foot the bill, just basically tell the church to take care of it.
There's a lot of stories about the barbarians attacking Rome just for the church, mostly. Go to the church, take all their silver and stuff.
Oh yeah, they sacked the church. They took everything that wasn't nailed down. Instead, we got worse and worse. So divisions within the church, within the royal family. One of Constantine's nephew became emperor, Julian the Apostate, said the entire family is a bunch of hypocrites. They don't really believe in Christianity. Declared himself to be a member of the old Roman, resurrected the old Roman gods, reopened the old temples. So they call him apostate because he went against the church. Last non-Christian emperor. And basically stepped on too many toes, and he was assassinated too. Placed by Jovian, he's assassinated a year later. And co-emperor Valentinian I and Emperor Valens. A few co-emperors in here and there, but here's the problem. In 378, Valens is killed in battle by in a battle with his Gothic tribes, and so that made his successor Theodosius realize just how bad problems really work. Emperor killed in battle. The armies had swelled in numbers, but they're losing more and more. Some of these tribes the Romans were able to pacify, especially again in the late 4th and early 5th century. But what they do is they let some of these groups live on the Roman side of the border. But they'd have to give up all their weapons. They'd be living in these little camps under Roman guard. They have very little food available. In fact, sometimes there are cases that women had to sell their children to slavery just for meat. dogma usually. When the Romans needed troops, they would recruit from these Germanic tribes living under guard. So increasingly, the armies are not made up of Romans, not of Italians, but of Germans. And having grown up under the Roman Empire in this way, what incentive would they have to give their all for Rome? None. What kind of loyalty do they have for Rome? None. It's a paycheck. That's it. So why would somebody stick out their neck under those circumstances? So they have these armies now, and the armies are, by the early 5th century, it's up to 500,000 men. Compare that to Caesar Augustus. Wasn't even a quarter of that. He had 128,000 men. Total. 128,000 man army. That's enough to conquer the entire Mediterranean world. But now the Romans, like 4th and 5th century, 500,000 men. They're getting their hind ends handed to them. Because at this point, all the divisions of Rome have been cleared to everyone. And it's only because of the strength and stability of the Roman system they're even still around. Basically, they're coasting along. They're able to pay their army. Barely. They have all these men under arms, but not really giving their all for it. The Roman officials still stealing from the government like there's no tomorrow. Very corrupt. They've alienated the entire population. One historian of this time period set out the problem of Rome very well, stating, all barbarians, from the tribe, all barbarians want to be Romans. But a poor Roman would want to be a barbarian. Another commented, what damage can these barbarians do compared to the damage of our own civil wars? Rome's problems wasn't immigration, it wasn't invasions. It's what Rome was doing to itself. Few people saw what they could get for themselves. The old civic spirit of the old republic, long since gone. Saw what they could get for themselves, and they got what they could for themselves. People alienated, disgusted, Christians walking off in droves. Why should they involve themselves in such a corrupt organization? So things just went from bad to worse for them. But Theodosius realized all the problems and tried to organize the army, tried to organize administration of the state, issued a new law code in 392, the Theodosian Code. Basically, a lot of redundancy in this law code. Laws repeating themselves over and over again, just trying to avoid any kind of possible loophole. Desperate attempt to gain money, Theodosius said, nothing shall be considered exempt from taxation. Taxing everything. In order to try to keep people in certain professions and even for the stability of society. Children, sons of certain craftsmen were not allowed to do anything but that craft of their father. So if their father's a butcher, they're going to be butcher. If their father's a baker, they're going to be baker. If their father's a carpenter, they're going to be carpenter. But in all this, though, the problems of corruption continue. And finally, Theodosius decided that Rome was just simply too big for one man to run. So he divided Rome in half, the eastern and western half, placing his two sons on the throne. Honorius in the west, Arcadius in the east. Now, the death of 395, that became the reality. Now, supposedly, they aren't going to make they're going to consult each other on decisions and line of succession and so forth, but that's not what really happened. basically became two separate states. Here's the thing. Honorius, when he comes to the throne, he's 10 years old. Arcadius is 18. Arcadius' empire is based in Constantinople. They're in Asia Minor. City name for Constantine. Like I said, basically they're both kids, but in spite of all the wealth and education that emperor's wealth could afford, his children are idiots. They don't have the sense God gave the common dog, and they rule just that way. Arcadius, like I said, his empire is considered the weaker one, but actually is going to survive the West by 1,000 years. So he dies fairly young. He dies in 408, succeeded by Theodosius II, which gives the Eastern Empire some stability, so they're not fighting each other on the throne. Theodosius II, his successor, ruled until his death in 450. Honorius rules a Roman general, the Magister Militium, the master of the military, Stilicho, a German general, is going to be ruling as regent, basically making all the decisions for him. Stilicho actually proved to be a very effective general, but Honorius ignores him. In 404, Honorius moves the capital from Rome to Ravenna. It's a tiny little city on the Adriatic coast, surrounded by swamps. Basically a place where he can live, make decisions, not be bothered by anybody. But in the meantime, Rome's fighting for its life. The Visigoths have invaded the Eastern Empire. They're barely able to repel them, but the Eastern Empire is able to push out the Visigoths, basically able to push them west. Stilicho is able to hold them in the northeastern part of the Western Empire, but when he dies in 408, that's a problem. Stilicho died. And after Stilicho dies, the leader of the Visigoths, Alaric, sees his chance. Breaks through the Roman lines, invades Italy, and in 410, sacks Rome. Rome, the eternal city, had not been invaded by a foreign enemy in centuries. The Romans see these foreign army barreling through, stealing everything they can that isn't nailed down, raping, pillaging, murdering, staying there for several days, before finally leaving. Basically, for the Romans, this is the end of the world. This is their apocalypse. The idea of Rome being invaded was unthinkable. Rome, the center of the world. That illusion of confidence is shattered. In fact, some historians date the fall of Rome in 410. But as a political institution, it's going to go on for another couple of decades. Like I say, Honorius dies in 423. A couple others coming in after him. But you have a Germanic leader, Attila the Hun, ruling from 434 to 453. The Hun basically worked with the Western and Eastern Empire to create some stability in the areas north of the Danube. Attila had basically conquered most of those tribes, but 453, upset with Rome, having falling out with their emperor, threatens to invade Rome, invades Italy, and is only stopped at the last minute when Pope Leo I stepped on the battlefield and demands that Attila stop his invasion. Well, Attila's invasion is stopped, he agrees to do so, but Rome has to pay him off. And Rome pays very handsomely. Attila goes back north of the Alps, where he dies after his wedding feast, basically drinking himself to death. But I got another problem here. Another group called the Vandals. The term vandalism, that's where you get that name from. They storm across the Rhine into Gaul, Spain. 439, they seized the city of Carthage in North Africa. Basically, Rome's empire in North Africa has been stripped from them. And in 405, Britain was abandoned. Roman troops just walked away. But in 455, Gaiseric the Vandal builds a navy of Vandals, and they sail across the Mediterranean, sack Rome again. Basically, again, stealing what they can, destroying the rest, vandalizing it. That's the term vandalism from. It's kind of a racist term if you think about it. And they are wiped out in the 6th century, so none are left to object. So Rome is basically reduced to a puppet state. Britain's been abandoned. Dacia was long since abandoned, 3rd century. Gauls basically overrun. The Visigoths basically have now taken up most of Spain. North Africa controlled by the Vandals. So now you have this general, Ricimer, taking charge. Magister militia from 456 to 472. Now, since he's German, the Romans won't let him be emperor himself, but he spent the next 16 years making and unmaking emperors, about 4 emperors altogether. He doesn't like them, has them assassinated, has them murdered, and put someone else in charge. And then over and over again. Okay, finally, Ricimer himself dies. But at this point, Rome is so weak that he can't make decisions for himself. Can't decide he's going to be emperor. Basically, it's all these tribes that have invaded all his territory. See in 185. Franks, Burgundians, Goths, Ostrogoths and Visigoths, the Eastern Empire. They're the ones deciding who's going to be the Roman emperor. Because see, Rome was still so important symbolically, they're not going to let it go. They like the idea of having Rome, representing some stability in the world. It's the goose that laid the golden egg. They're not going to kill it. They're going to let it live anemically, weakly, but they're not going to destroy it altogether. Let's not guess. 474, Julius Nepos comes in. But a couple of these emperors object. A couple of these kings object. Throw them out. 475. Last Roman emperor, Romulus Augustulus, 475. 14 years old. Son of a German general and a Roman nobleman. But Odoacer, king of the Ostrogoths, is tired of the whole thing. Does not let his kid be emperor. So he invades Italy in 476, taking out Rome. Briefly considers giving the crown to someone else, but they'll accept it. So Odoacer declares Rome to be dead and declares himself to be king of Italy. That is the end of the Roman Empire in the West, 476. Romulus Augustulus, the last of them. Actually, he's bought off into a nice retirement, dies of natural causes some years later. We're interested. This marks the end of the ancient age. And chapter 7 and 8 for next time. Chapter 6 quiz. If there's nothing else, we'll see you all next time.